How to learn Japanese from listening, even if you don't understand anything. When I started learning Japanese, for the first 2 years, I basically did zero immersion. I used to have like these online classes where I would go for a 90-minute lesson once a week. We would learn some grammar, some vocabulary like animals, colors, stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, it was fun, but I wasn't really learning that much. I had this mindset that probably came from school because of how they teach you languages in school, that you first need to go through the textbook to understand the basics to actually try and speak and understand the language. But even though I was kind of progressing during these online classes, I wasn't happy. Like 1 year, 2 years pass and I basically don't speak Japanese, and I'm like, what the fuck? I've seen people learn this language in like a year or something like that. Like, how do they do it? Like, I basically can only do like grammar exercises. I can basically like introduce myself after all this time. But for the last couple months especially, I started immersing. So basically I would watch native content in Japanese without like English subtitles and just try to listen to native Japanese as much as possible. And basically in the last 6 months I've made more progress in Japanese than I did for the first 2 years. はい、皆さんこんにちは、tomekkuです。日本朗読学方法と自己啓発について動画撮ってるんですけど、もしよかったら登録してくださいね。それでは、let me tell you something about learning Japanese. It is not about understanding every single word as you go and learn, but it's about being comfortable with not knowing, letting your brain figure it out, knowing that you will learn it eventually. If you're anything like me, you probably had this feeling that, oh, I'm not gonna watch the native materials, I will put on the subtitles, I will go through the textbook first because I don't understand anything, so how am I supposed to watch this YouTube video? How am I supposed to watch this episode of anime because it's so difficult? This is the common misconception, I'm not going to immerse right now because I'm not good enough yet. But let me ask you a question. What would you tell to a skinny guy, like somebody with zero muscles at all, when he tells you that he's not going to the gym, he's not bench pressing because he's too weak, he's not strong enough yet? You would tell him what the fuck are you doing? That's how you get better at the thing, by practicing it, by being weak and still pushing through it. That's how you get better at it, by practicing the thing and not by doing something different. I don't know, watching more videos about how to bench press. You're not gonna get stronger from that. So now that I said it, doesn't it seem completely fucking ridiculous how schools teach you language and how conventional language learning is? They give you this textbook, right? With these easiest sentences like A is B, the sky is blue, fucking stuff like that it's so simple. They introduce you to the grammar and you basically understand everything on the page, right? Because that's what you studied. You only know what you know. But if you only practice what you are good at, you how do you expect to go from that to actually understanding Japanese? It will take fucking years, right? But the problem is that schools won't let you watch Japanese YouTube or Spanish YouTube, whatever language you're learning, from the day one, because it would just seem ridiculous in the school environment, right? You sit the kids, give them a big ass TV, just watch something like a vlog or watch some anime, some, I don't know, Breaking Bad to learn English. Because of course for the first weeks, maybe even months, the kids would first of all get distracted because they would just see it as fun. They wouldn't even focus on the thing. So that's one reason why you cannot do it in schools. But the second thing is, it would seem so pointless if the kids didn't make any progress, even though they actually learn a lot more from just listening than they would from doing textbooks, doing grammar exercises. So now you understand that immersion is basically better than anything to do with textbooks and conventional learning apps and shit like that. That you need to go at the language as a whole. But how do you exactly do it at first when you don't understand anything? Like I just told you that at the school it would seem completely ridiculous because the kids would not understand anything. There would be no way to like check their knowledge for like a month, 2 months. You know, this is the hard thing about tolerating the ambiguity when you're like studying Japanese or a language. You need to get comfortable with not knowing. And how exactly do you do it? How do you go through the pain of... It's like... It's so hard because it's like you're going to the gym, training for fucking months, seeing no progress with like muscle gains. You feel like you're giving up, like you need to start easier. But you will make the gains, like you will build the muscle if you just keep on going, right? Even if you don't see results immediately. So let me tell you how I figured out how to get comfortable with not knowing Japanese when I would listen to it. Let me tell you how I got comfortable with not knowing, because there is a couple tactics. The first thing is watching something that is not so interesting. You know, one of the first times when I actually like immersed in Japanese and I felt comfortable with not knowing what's going on was when I was listening to this podcast. It was called Yu Japanese Podcast. And the episode was about history. I don't give a single fuck about history, okay? Even though Japan is cool and whatever, like, it just doesn't work for me, right? I cannot remember anything. But I would listen to it just for the sake of listening to Japanese. I didn't feel like I'm losing something by not understanding. I didn't feel like, oh, let me turn on the subtitles, let me check what that word means, because I'm probably missing like what's going on. I wanna know the lore, I wanna know like the story, like what's going on, right? But the fact that I was watching something boring for me made it so that I didn't have to check it. I would just go through the episodes and finish it. This is the thing, right? If you are somebody who likes watching anime, for example, or like TV shows, like you could possibly learn with that, but in my opinion it is so much harder when you actually like want to know what's going on. Because let's say you really want to watch Evangelion and you're studying Japanese, so you feel like, oh, let me watch it in Japanese, right? The thing that happens then is you don't have a single fucking clue what's going on. Even if you would watch it in English, like in your native language, it's still hard to fucking understand what's going on in that show, right? Because it's so crazy. So, not understanding, not knowing why this happened, why Shinji did that, why Rei suddenly popped up, why Misato said this thing, because you kinda missed, like, you didn't understand a word, you didn't understand something. This just makes you wanna either put the English subtitles or just stop watching. Anime and shows are made to be like addictive, right? They're made, like designed, the plot, the story, the everything is made so that you invest in it, so that you wanna keep on watching, you wanna understand what's gonna happen next. And when you don't understand the language, it like makes you feel so lost. That's why I believe the second thing that you gotta do to like get comfortable with not knowing is watching something that is not so addictive, maybe. I don't know if that's the proper word, but I prefer to watch YouTube, right? If you're just watching like a daily vlog on YouTube, you can kinda guess what's going on. You don't feel like, oh, that person would probably say something that changes everything. Like, no, bro, you fucking... It's their day in the life, they just narrate what they are doing. So even if you don't understand something, like, it's alright. Oh, I didn't understand what he said, but like he was brushing his teeth, so maybe that word means to brush teeth. It's just, from my opinion, it's so much easier. With shows, it's kinda like you maybe flex to people, maybe you like add it to your watched list when you've watched a show, but when you watch like an anime and you don't even fucking know what it was about, it's kinda like you didn't even watch it, right? Like you just seen the images, you heard some word, you heard the language, you didn't understand it, so you've no clue what the story was about. But with YouTube, like, you watch countless YouTube videos. It's not like you remember every single video that you watched, but you probably do remember every single show that you did watch. Maybe apart from like single episodes which you watched like as a little kid on like Cartoon Network or some shit like that. You don't need to remember what the video was about. You watch it just for the sake of language learning. And the thing is that yeah, you could make the same progress watching shows if you're the kind of person who literally like you can keep on watching even if you don't understand anything. Maybe you love the art style, maybe the fact that you listen to the language is enough for you to keep going, then perfect. Like there is nothing I can say to stop you from like watching anime if that's your thing, right? But for the most people, like from my experience, I'm not able to focus. I'm getting distracted, I'm getting anxious that I don't understand the story. So I'm better off just watching YouTube because I don't feel like I lose anything, if you know what I mean. Another thing is that if you really fucking hate YouTube for some reason, and if you really want to watch a show, here's something that I did with a show called Extremely Inappropriate, like Futeki in Japanese it was like Futeki to ni mo hodo ga aru. The show was so cool. First I watched it with like Japanese subtitles. I checked a couple sentences when I felt like I didn't know what was going on, but that was at the point where I already understood a lot of Japanese, so maybe like 70%, so it was alright, like I would understand what's going on. I really liked this show and I felt like there is so many useful expressions and I wanted to learn them by heart kinda. I wanted to immerse in this show more and actually understand it, not so it's just like active immersion, but very 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 active immersion to the point that I understand every single thing that's said in the video. What I did then was I watched the show with like in my native language with the subtitles, right? So I knew scene after scene what was being said, right? Maybe not so perfectly, maybe not so like precisely, but I would basically understand everything that's going on in every single scene. Then what I did was I watched the show in Japanese again without like checking anything. But because of the fact that I understood the scene before when I watched it in Polish or like English, I would associate the stuff that was said in Japanese with the context that I already remembered from watching it in my native language. Then I would watch the show over and over and over again. Like I watched the first episode like 10 times maybe. At some point I was listening to it like a podcast. And now a lot of the expressions stayed with me. Yeah, that's kind of a thing, you know, because in the beginning, if you go and like try and immerse in like the whole YouTube, let's say, or like in the whole Netflix, there is just so many different words and expressions, verbs, adjectives, stuff that is being said that it would take you ages to like remember, to like learn the whole language at once. To tolerate ambiguity, to like be comfortable with not knowing, you can do this thing where you only watch shows or videos about one topic, let's say cooking, because then the vocabulary, it is like repeated so consistently, like you hear it over and over again, like fork or like knife or like heat or like frying pan, stuff like that. You hear it often, and because of that, like you remember it quicker, rather than if you would watch one video about cooking, next about sports, another one about like computer science. It's just a lot of different fields of knowledge. And another thing you can do to like really maximize it is like what I did with that show. Just watch the same piece of content over and over again until you understand basically everything. But to that, like I would recommend you first watch it with like Japanese subtitles, then again if in your native language to see how much you did, how much like stuff you got correctly, and then watch it over and over and over again in Japanese when you already know the context of each scene. And that's about it, honestly, like a couple tactics that really helped me. The thing that I said at the beginning of this video was how I studied for 2 years, and the last 6 months when I actually immersed, like I made a lot more progress. It's hard to like really put it into maybe levels or numbers, but I believe that from the first 5 years of studying Japanese, without immersion. I went from maybe N5 to N4, and in the last like couple months I went from like maybe N4 and getting closer to N2. Like I'm very fluent in like daily conversations, but I don't know a lot of vocabulary. Like I don't really read Japanese, so that's something. But if your goal is to like speak with native people, maybe on your trip to Japan, that's what I did. Like I was basically able to speak fluently in every situation that I encountered during my trip after just 6 months of immersion. It's like, oh, but you studied for 3 years. It's like I made no fucking progress in the first 2, okay? I think that if you just like read some grammar, maybe like a book about grammar, Tateim's Guide to Learning Japanese, if you just like learn most common words, and apart from that, which should take you like half an hour a day maybe, if you just immerse, you will like reach the same level that I did in 6 months, maybe in like 7 or 8, because the first 2 years, like if you start with immersion, you can do it in like a month or 2. And that's what I believe. I basically didn't learn fucking anything, you know. The basics are so fucking easy, like right. I hope I inspired you. I hope you give this method a chance. I hope you can actually learn Japanese properly. See ya.